The year was 1998, so no, we're not talking about that Avengers. And Warner Brothers believed that we needed a summer movie release that was based on a British 60s spy action series. You know, something that kids at a school would know and love. The studio went all in on an adaptation of the spy television series The Avengers, which originally ran from 1961 to 1969. The film is directed by Jeremiah Chechik and stars Ralph Fiennes, Uma Thurman, and Sean Connery. And despite some fine pedigree in front of the camera, the film was a major box office bomb upon release, and it's regarded by some as one of the worst films ever made. Come to think of it, are we sure we don't want to do the other Avengers? Might be more pleasant for everybody, right? Okay, let's find out why this modern take on a 60s spy series didn't take off on the big screen and discover what the happened to this movie. To understand the Avengers, perhaps we need to go back to the beginning. The film is an adaptation of the British espionage television series of the same name. Running for 161 episodes, the show was a spy adventure that initially focused on David Keel, played by Ian Hendry, who was accompanied by John Steed, played by Patrick Macnee. Hendry didn't last beyond the first season, and the Steed character found himself leading the charge. He would be partnered with a number of assistants, and the most famous were all intelligent and strong women. Kathy Gale, Emma Peel, and Tara King were the stylish and remarkable women by Steed's side at one point or another, but for the sake of our episode, we'll be focusing on Diana Rigg's Emma Peel, as she will be the character adapted for the 1998 big screen take. Emma Peel made her debut on The Avengers in 1965, and according to television history, she was given this name in early development because they wanted the character to have, quote, man appeal. See what they did there? Pretty good. They even tried to be more on the nose by calling her Samantha Peel, which led to them shortening it to the awkward Mantha Peel. Soon enough, the writers called her by the verbal shorthand M. Appeal, which brings us to her forever name, Emma Peel. Compared to his other assistants, there was a lighter and comedic tone between Steed and Peel, and you can see that's what they brought to the film version in 1998. There's more of a wittiness between the characters, and it becomes less of a serious espionage crime series. Looking at the 1998 film, the leads were capably cast. Ralph Fiennes, Oscar nominated for 93's Schindler's List and 96's The English Patient, took on the role of secret agent John Steed, while Uma Thurman, Oscar nominated for 94's Pulp Fiction, was cast as meteorologist Dr. Emma Peel. Nicole Kidman was in the running at one point for the role, but she was already contracted to make Eyes Wide Shut, probably for the best. Adding even more prestige to the cast was Sean Connery as Sir August de Wynter, one of those by-the-numbers mad scientist supervillains hell-bent on controlling the world's weather. I mean, look at his name. What else could he possibly do for a living? The part of Sir August de Wynter was smaller in the original script, but it was expanded when Connery came on board. As for the film's plot, we have our two British agents teaming up to stop de Wynter from destroying the world with his weather-changing machine. In the director's chair, we had Jeremiah Chechik, best known for helming National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Benny and June, and the remake of Diabolique. There are about 1.5 good movies in that group, so the Avengers should have been at least adequate hands heading into production. Chechik also took on screenwriting duties with Don McPherson, who also came up with the film's story. McPherson's a British screenwriter who did some rewriting work on David Fincher's Alien 3. That installment isn't exactly highly regarded in the franchise, and since we're not sure how much he actually rewrote, we'll give him a pass. We'll also give him some post-Avengers credit for doing some writing on 1998's Entrapment, because if he's responsible for writing the Catherine Zeta-Jones training scene, all is forgiven.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, she deeps beneath the lasers. Ooh.
Peter Bart's book, The Gross, probably provides the greatest details as to what went wrong with this film as it headed into production, and the mess and the chop job that occurred during post ahead of the film's release. Warner Brothers greenlit the film on the backs of its lead cast, and they had a strong appreciation for Chechik's work on Diabolique. The film also received some favorable hype while shooting in London. According to Bart, quote, "Here was a romantic thriller with style, sophistication, and retro charm. Despite that early goodwill, there was a 115-minute version of the film that was shot, but it was cut to hell and back after Warner Brothers saw the first cut of the movie and absolutely hated it. The first screening took place in front of a, quote, largely Spanish-speaking working-class audience in Phoenix, Arizona, who also hated the finished product. This led the studio to force Chechik to cut many of his favorite scenes and do reshoots. The film went from 115 minutes to 89, and is the completely incoherent mess that was released to the masses. Warner Brothers was so turned off by the movie that they refused to hold further test screenings or have an official premiere. The movie was supposed to open in the more prime June summer slot of 1998 compared to August when it was released, but all of the problems made the studio shift it to the dumping ground of August, knowing that the film was cut so poorly that it wouldn't make a lick of sense to anyone who saw it. According to Mick LaSalle of the San Francisco Chronicle, quote, "There's some business involving a dead ringer for Emma going around causing trouble, and there's some mention of the word cloning, then all talk of that is dropped. Everything is dropped. After a slow opening, the 90-minute movie jolts into climax mode. What happened to the middle? Clearly, this wasn't just edited, but gutted. No doubt they did us all a favor, but it doesn't help. Instead of just being a bad picture, the missing middle makes the Avengers a bad and weird and strangely off picture. One example? There's never a moment when Emma and Steed realize who the villain is. At first, they don't know. Next, they're in a titanic battle to the death. At one point, Emma is shackled and floating around in a hot air balloon. I don't know how she got there. I must have blinked. That's quite a review. Patrick Macnee, who played John Steed in the original series and makes a vocal appearance as the voice of Invisible Jones in the film, has said that the shooting script was better than half of the scripts he had to perform on the television series. The shooting script does differ majorly from what made it to the screen, so it's possible that Macnee was right. The sad part is that the 115-minute version is said to be lost, at least by the studio. Director Jeremiah Chechik has said that he would recut the movie for free so we could see the proper version, but Warner Brothers is beyond not interested in doing a director's cut of the film. Given how long it's been, we highly doubt it'll ever happen, unless this movie gains some crazy cult following and starts trending on Twitter for some reason. But don't forget to @JoBlo. The original script does follow a similar plot structure, but some of the elements that were trimmed or eliminated altogether from the finished movie include the aforementioned opening sequence that has Emma Peel working at the weather base with her husband Peter Peel and his brother Valentine Peel. After Peter gives Emma a ring, the base is blown up and Peter and Valentine are killed in the explosion, while Emma barely escapes with her life. Also, in the original script, the villain is named Merryweather and not De Wynter. As the script moves along, Emma has visions of Peter talking to her, and this begs the question whether her sanity is intact following the explosion. It tries to set up that Emma might have split personalities and could be the mastermind behind everything going on. By the finale, we learn that Valentine was the person behind all the madness, having staged his death during the explosion. He wanted to kill Peter because he desired to have the ring, which contained important information about the weather. He tries to trick Emma by disguising himself as Peter in order for her to hand over the right, but it doesn't work. We then learn that all of the visions that Emma had been having were staged by Valentine. As you know, most of that didn't make the final cut, and even though a lot of that doesn't make much sense either, it may have fit in more coherently within the project as originally intended. Because of the cuts, the film's original composer, Michael Kamen, had to drop out. His score contained elements of the original Avengers theme, but he was unable to rescore the movie after the editing nightmare took place, so the recut version was scored by Joel McNeely. The Avengers was made for $60 million, and Warner Brothers decided not to screen it because, as they said at the time, they wanted the critics and public to discover the film together. A movie with this kind of budget being held from critics is always a bad sign, and given all the internal battles going on that saw a lot of the film being cut to oblivion, they knew they had a stinker and wanted to try to mitigate their losses. The Avengers was released on August 14, 1998, and opened in third place with $10.3 million, behind the debut of How Stella Got Her Groove Back and the fourth weekend of Saving Private Ryan. It was a quick decline from there, as the film collapsed 64.4% in its second weekend, placing 10th with a gross of $3.6 million. By the end of its run, the Avengers grossed a dismal $23.3 million at the domestic box office and $54.7 million worldwide, under its $60 million production budget. Critics were also quite rough on the Avengers. Its Rotten Tomatoes score comes in at a disastrous 5% and has a consensus that reads, quote, "A TV spinoff that lacks enough energy to spin, The Avengers is an ineptly written, woefully miscast disaster." Opening night moviegoers graced it with a D cinema score, so they were completely in line with movie critics on this one. The main take from all of the reviews is that fans of the series didn't like how it disrespected the source material, particularly the relationship between Steed and Peel. On the series, any romance was always ambiguous, but the film dropped the ambiguity altogether. Some critics said they even lacked chemistry. And in 2003, Total Film magazine voted Fiennes and Thurman as the worst movie double act of all time. Even the director said, quote, "I met Uma. She was perfectly nice and charming and talented. But ultimately, her chemistry with Ralph was not there." Those who were unfamiliar with the show were lost by the overall tone. The film's incoherent nature was also addressed in several reviews, as it was clear so many sequences were missing that would at least allow the movie to try and make sense. Since the film had a bullseye on it that practically said, "Look how bad I am," The Avengers was nominated for 9 Razzies at the 19th Golden Raspberry Awards. Its nominations included Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, Worst Actor for Ralph Fiennes, Worst Actress for Uma Thurman, Worst Supporting Actor for Sean Connery, Worst Screen Couple for Fiennes and Thurman, of course, Worst Original Song, and Worst Remake or Sequel, the latter of which being its only quote-unquote win. The wreckage of the Avengers affected all involved in different ways. Back in 2011, Ralph Fiennes said, quote, "I love going to work on the Avengers. You don't go to work thinking you're going to make a bad film. I went to work thinking, great, let's reinvent the Avengers, which I loved as a kid. It's only now, because of the way it was received, that we look back and groan." He also said, quote, "I think it's a badge of honor to have a real flop on your resume." In all seriousness, Fiennes' career was derailed the least, because really, the results of the film made it clear that he wasn't going to be a movie star in the traditional sense, but he would be a reliable performer in far more prestigious work. Sure, he had some mainstream hits like the rom-com Made in Manhattan, playing Voldemort in the Harry Potter films, and showing up in the Daniel Craig Bond films. But we'd say he's been wonderfully comfortable putting in fine performances in smaller efforts. The film's failure was more damaging to the careers of director Jeremiah Chechik, Sean Connery, and Uma Thurman. Chechik wouldn't direct a film for 15 years, until Right Kind of Wrong in 2013. Connery quit acting after the release of this film and 2003's The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, also a massive flop. Uma Thurman would eventually recover, but The Avengers came a little over a year after Batman and Robin flopped, which featured the actress playing Poison Ivy. Thurman found it hard to find significant roles until Quentin Tarantino revived her career with Kill Bill in 2003. Perhaps the lesson to be learned here is a project should be greenlit when it has a great story, and not just because hot talent is being featured in front of the camera. Also, maybe look into if people are actually for the intellectual property you're trying to adapt. But most importantly, cutting a large portion of the film and releasing it to the masses without care, probably not too great of a look. Perhaps there is a good movie version of the Avengers to be made, but this one simply missed the mark.
Let us know your thoughts. Leave a comment in the comments, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. We're an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.